All right, now we've got plenty of suburbs in Victoria going into lockdown and international flights being diverted in a bid to curb the spread of the coronavirus outbreak in the state. Residents will be forced to stay at home or face on-the-spot fines. And Daniel Andrews has also called on the federal government for help to coordinate the suburban testing blitz. Joining me now, Victoria's Shadow Health Minister, Georgie Crozier. Georgie, thanks for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your time. Lot to unpack, as we said earlier. What's the latest down there? I mean, this is obviously, I just had Peter Gleeson on the show. She's referring it to a second wave now, not a spike. Do you believe that?
Well, Peter, we've got a COVID crisis in Victoria and it's all of Daniel Andrews' own making. I mean, we shouldn't be in this situation. We shouldn't have this spike in numbers and these lockdowns that are occurring that are across these suburbs. And we are having it because of the mishandling by the Andrews government. And it's just shameful that the government won't take any responsibility for their mishandling of what's gone on. So there are so many issues, whether it's the Cedar Meats cluster mishandling, whether it's the issue around the quarantine security and the latest debacle, or whether there are other issues with the testing that has just seen so many people turned away. This is a shambles and we do need help. There's no question about that.
Georgie, do you believe that the quarantining scandal or fiasco, where hotels have obviously dropped the ball, is that the major source of this particular second wave, or are we talking about other factors here, possibly community transmission at events in the last 2 or 3 weeks?
Well, Peter, that's a really good question because we're the state with the community transmission that is at these numbers. No other state has the community transmission as Victoria has. And you talk about events in recent weeks. Why is it that we are the only state that has this spike in numbers? It's not only the mishandling of the quarantine security that you highlight. That is certainly an issue, and it has been an issue for some weeks where security guards were saying we didn't have enough training, we didn't have enough PPE, we've had this cross-infection and now a spread in the community. But let's not forget what Daniel Andrews did. He sent mixed messages and the double standards that he said to Victorians in relation to the protest. We don't know the true community links because we can't get any information out of the Andrews government. I'd love to know the true effects, but the fact is, even through our FOI process or asking questions, we actually don't know. So there are many questions the government has to answer on this, and there are so many issues that the government has mishandled. As I said, the Cedar Meats cluster, the biggest cluster in Victoria, the government's own minister said it had been handled absolutely perfectly. And now they're blaming all of these other outbreaks to families. It's the family's fault, or it's the millennials' fault, and now it's the hotel security fault. The government is blaming everybody else, and they need to start to take responsibility for their mishandling of the COVID response here in Victoria.
He's been referred to as Teflon Dan over the years. Nothing really seems to have stuck to this bloke, and yet his popularity has crashed off the back of the mishandling of this particular crisis. We've seen the branch stacking in the Victorian Labor Party, which has, sort of exposed an almost an underbelly-style way in which they do business. I thought the red shirt scandal would hurt him last time round, Georgie. But are you getting a sense within your community, within your constituency, that people have had enough of this government?
Well, absolutely. I'm getting phone calls, I'm getting emails, I'm getting people stopping me in the streets saying, we've had enough of this, whether it's the issue around the branch stacking or the COVID response, the mixed messages, Peter, that he sent to Victorians. We've had the strictest restrictions here in Victoria. You were shunned upon if you were going to visit your mother on Mother's Day. We weren't allowed to, but 2 days later we were allowed to. The Premier said, playing golf is not worth someone's life. So people were looking over the border, seeing people fishing, boating, playing golf. We couldn't do that here in Victoria. So we had these toughest restrictions. And yet the Premier, with a wink and a nod, gave the green light to the protest. That sent the mixed messages and the double standards that have applied. And so people have just said, hang on a minute, we're sick of this. We're sick of being under this state of emergency. We're losing our livelihoods. We're losing our jobs. and they are angry. And I am getting calls from hardcore Labor people are ringing my office saying, I've lost my job, and he let that protest go ahead. So it's not me saying this is people ringing me and saying it. So there is a huge amount of concern around the COVID response, around the branch stacking, which just goes to the heart of how this government has learnt nothing from the red shirts scandal. That was outrageous. And again, all of those issues. And then, of course, we've got the Belt and Road Initiative, which is really worrying many Victorians. They're very concerned about the Premier's relationship with the Chinese Communist government and just how that will play out. And so many people are very concerned about that. So I'm not surprised that people are now questioning Daniel Andrews, just seeing him at the person he is and the administration that he is overseeing.
Yeah, it's the mixed messaging. I think that's the key. And we had similar situations here in Queensland with those protests a couple of weeks ago. I think, you know, that's what really angers people, because they did the right thing. They flattened the curve, and now they're having to go through it again. Georgie Crozier, thanks for joining us tonight. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure, Peter. Good to be with you.